Welcome to my books and storytime by mybooksummary.com. The Good Enough Job by Simone Stolzoff. Picture this: you're at a gathering, balancing a plate of snacks in one hand and a drink in the other, when someone turns to you with that ever-so-predictable question. So, what do you do? It's an innocent enough inquiry, but for many of us, it feels like a test. A moment where we must deliver an impressive, concise summary of our entire worth in a single sentence. If you've got a job that sounds fancy, you puff out your chest a little. Oh, I'm in marketing at a major firm. If your job isn't conventionally glamorous, maybe you soften it with humor. I'm an accountant. Yes, I make spreadsheets exciting. But what if you're unemployed, or between jobs, or in a role that doesn't fit neatly into a box? Suddenly, that harmless question becomes a crisis of self-worth. Simone Stolzoff's The Good Enough Job confronts this head-on. Why do we tie so much of our identity to our jobs? When did work stop being just a way to pay the bills and become the central pillar of our entire existence? More importantly, what if we stop treating it that way? With a blend of sharp insight, real-life stories, and an unflinching look at modern work culture, Stolzoff argues that we've let work consume too much of our lives. But the good news? We can take it back. And we don't have to quit our jobs, run off to live in the mountains, or start an avocado farm to do it. Instead, we can embrace the idea of a good enough job. A job that pays the bills, gives us stability, and doesn't demand our soul in return. Sounds radical? That's because in today's hustle culture, it is. The cult of work worship. How we got here. There was a time when people worked to survive. That was it. You woke up, did your job, collected your paycheck, and went home to live your actual life. Work wasn't your identity, it was a means to an end. Fast forward to today, and things look very different. Work is no longer just what we do. It's who we are. Stolzoff calls this the work worship culture. The belief that our jobs should provide not just money, but purpose, fulfillment, social status, and deep personal meaning. From the time we're kids, we're bombarded with messages like, find your passion, and you'll never work a day in your life. Do what you love, and the money will follow. If you don't love your job, you're doing something wrong. These ideas sound inspiring, but they also set impossible expectations. What happens if you don't have a singular, burning passion? What if your dream job doesn't pay the bills? What if you once loved your job, but now it's sucking the life out of you? The pressure to find a job that's not just work but a calling is exhausting. Worse, it sets people up for disappointment. Because brace yourself, most jobs aren't magical. And that's okay. The dream job is a lie. Raise your hand if you've ever chased the idea of a dream job. You know the story. You find the perfect job that aligns with your soul. You wake up every day excited to work. You don't mind long hours because you're doing what you love. You climb the ladder, get promotions, and find total fulfillment through your work. Sounds great, right? Except there's just one small problem. It's a lie. Stolzoff introduces us to people who once had their so-called dream jobs. People who landed prestigious roles in journalism, tech, and creative industries, only to discover that work, no matter how fulfilling, still felt like, well, work. Deadlines still loomed. Office politics still existed. Passion didn't make 60-hour workweeks any less exhausting. The cruel irony is that the more we romanticize work, the easier we are to exploit. When we believe we should be grateful to have a job that aligns with our passion, we tolerate more unpaid overtime, more stress, more blurred boundaries. Because we're not just working, we're living our dreams. Employers love this mindset. If you believe your job is your life's purpose, you'll work harder for less. And when burnout inevitably comes knocking, well, it must be your fault for not loving it enough. What is a good enough job? So if the dream job is a scam, what's the alternative? Enter the good enough job. A good enough job isn't about settling. It's about shifting our expectations. It's about acknowledging that work is important, but not the most important thing in our lives. A good enough job. White heavy checkmark pays the bills. White heavy checkmark provides stability. White heavy checkmark allows you to have a life outside of work. Sounds reasonable, right? And yet, In a society obsessed with professional achievement, the idea of a job that's just fine can feel almost subversive. Stolzoff shares stories of people who intentionally stepped away from the high-stress, prestigious career paths to embrace work that gave them more freedom, balance, and peace of mind. Some took pay cuts to reclaim their evenings. Others left big corporations to work in smaller, lower-pressure environments. Some even left behind exciting careers to do something boring. And guess what? They were happier. The case for work-life separation. One of the book's most refreshing messages is that it's okay to separate your work from your sense of self. This means white heavy checkmark not checking emails at 11 p.m. White heavy checkmark taking vacations without guilt. White heavy checkmark finding fulfillment outside of your job title. The problem with work identity fusion is that it makes job loss feel like identity loss. If you tie your whole self-worth to your job, what happens if you get laid off or retire? Suddenly, you're not just unemployed, you're nobody. That's why reclaiming an identity beyond work is so important. Stolzoff encourages readers to nurture hobbies, friendships, and passions that don't involve making money. Read books, learn an instrument, volunteer, travel, whatever brings you joy that isn't tied to productivity. Final thoughts. Success on your own terms. At its heart, the good enough job is about liberation. Liberation from the pressure to find ultimate meaning in work. Liberation from the guilt of wanting more balance. Liberation from the belief that you are your job. Stolzoff's message isn't that we should all quit our jobs and live off the grid. It's that we should rethink what success really means. Success isn't just about promotions, titles, or LinkedIn endorsements. It's about designing a life that feels full and meaningful, not just in the office but outside of it. So the next time someone asks, "What do you do?" maybe, just maybe, you'll answer with something beyond your job title. Because you are more than your work. And that is more than good enough. Stay tuned for more enlightening content. Head over to www.mybooksummary.com. Don't forget to subscribe and share the magic with friends. And let's grow together through the power of books and interesting stories.